Hi everybody and welcome to our video here today. What we're looking at is finding an image on Google, so doing a search for it, finding something that we want to put into a project. We're going to learn how to add it into our project, and then we're going to learn how to add some text to our project. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we're just going to leave our Torchmate program. We're going to go to Google and find ourselves an image. I'm going to look for a tractor today. So just in Google, I'm searching tractor. As you probably already know, we're going to click on images just to make it break it down a little more specific for us here. And one little tool I found that helps quite a bit is if you go over to tools a little bit and you click on color, change it to black and white, it'll narrow down your search quite a bit. So as you see, what we're looking at now versus what we were first looking at, quite a bit more simpler of images. Let's go back to here. So here we have real tractors, and you will find that those are extremely difficult. Any kind of photographs like this are extremely difficult to put into the program so that the computer can understand what it is it wants to keep. It gets confused quite a bit. So I like to work with as simple colors as possible. You can work with 2 or 3 different colors. My preference is to find objects that are images that are already in black and white. I have the most success in transferring them into the program. So I do that black and white look there, and you can see these are a lot better than the initial pictures of tractors that I had. Several of these would work. Something like that would work. This has a lot of detail. I wouldn't recommend something like that. Again, quite a bit of detail. It'd be a lot of work removing the detailed stuff from it. This is pretty simple. I assume if your customer was after something, they would want something a little bit better than that. Something with a little more detail, but not too much. This is a lot better. Another trick to help you get going down the road to something that's really good to add into your program. You're not going to find this with everything, especially if you're doing like logos. But logos are easy anyways, because this black and white search for logos usually will get you exactly what you need. If it's a Dodge logo you're looking for, or a DC logo, or whatever it is you want, doing the black and white image search usually will find it. Or like I said, some of those cartoon versions will also work. Clip art is another way to find good pictures for inputting into the program, importing, sorry. But one of my favorite ways is through a DXF. So you type in your whatever it is you're looking for, and then type in DXF afterwards. And what a DXF is, it's basically a file that's already intended to be cut on a CNC either router or plasma cutter or laser, anything. The point is, it's basically a file that's made to be used with a cutting file. And so as you'll see, there's lots of options when we look at DXFs. Another option is vector. So type in your object, type in vector afterwards, and you're going to get some pretty good options like you did the first time. Once you have your object, let's say we like this tractor, come on over here, and it doesn't matter if it has these, except you don't want to, I guess it does matter because you don't want to infringe on any copyright issues there, especially if you're selling stuff, trying to make money off of it. But if you're just for practice and educational purposes, if it does have something on it, some wet marks and stuff like that, we can remove those with the program later on. So don't worry too much. Just look at the main image. Do you like it? Most likely, if you like it, we can use it. So we're going to right click on that image now, and I'm just going to go save image as. And as you can see, I've already found this image here. I called it tractor, but that's all you do is type in tractor, hit enter. There. So now I've saved it. I could keep searching, save 3 or 4 that you really like and see how they all paste in, or we could just leave the screen and then come back to it later. So I'm going to go back into the Torchmate program now. I'm going over to the file and import. I'm going to find my image. Here's that tractor I just found. I'll click on import, and it gives me this little sideways L looking thing. So I'm going to click anywhere on the screen. This is basically the paste icon they show. So I click, and that's just a left click, and it drops the image onto the screen for me. So now it's into the program. I can't cut from this though. All this is basically just that regular JPEG that we just pulled off of Google Images. So now what I'm going to do with it highlighted, as you can see it's not highlighted, click on it again, you get these little boxes around it. That means it's highlighted. We're going to this little icon right over here, our scan tool. Click on that and work with this AccuScan. This is the simplest way to make this work. The other options are for when you have to use an object but you can't, the AccuScan isn't going to work. Majority of the time it is way easier just to find a new image and find something that AccuScan works with. So in the AccuScan we get lots of different options here. Go with logo complex with detail. Again, this is the best way to do it and you'll have the most success, and you're better off just finding a new image if this doesn't work. So we set that for complex with detail, and most likely it's probably your default anyways. Then come on over here to vectorization. So remember we looked for a vector in the first place? Well, we're basically going to make a vector from this image. So in the Google image searches when we're looking for vectors, that's what we were looking for, was exactly something that's already in a program, if that makes sense to you. So we're going to vectorize that image now, and I'm going to hit close. After I hit close, now what it's done is it's selected the image. However, there's two layers to this. One is the image that's been vectorized, and two is the remainder from it. So basically takes, sorry, I should rephrase that. It took our image from Google Images and it made a vector from it. It traced it and then made a vector from that, sorry. So this isn't going to be as crisp and clean as our original image that I pasted in, but it doesn't matter because we don't need this piece anyway. So what I usually do is take it from there. I usually move it to the side, look at my object, and compare it to this. Did it get the detail good enough? Is there anything that's really off? Or no, it looks pretty good. So I'm just going to delete that. Since it was highlighted, it'll just let me just hit delete and be done. And then I'm going to go and select this. So now this is actually an image we can put right into a sign. So I could make a sign from this. Of course, this isn't a great option for that. For example, the Ford Mustang image. That we could make a sign from. If I go import, or this wrench here, we did that in our last one, and I import that, and I put the Mustang in there. We're going to scan that baby. And I'm going to go here, close that, and there we go. Now that I could make a sign from right there, and maybe I could type in whatever I wanted, 1988 Fox body, or just GT, or something like that. That could be used as an outline sign. So we can use an image for the outline of our project. Or if we already had a shape or something like that, like this, I'm just going to make a path on that. We could take that tractor now, set it on in there wherever we wanted. We'll look at moving stuff around later on. Put it in there, and boom, there's our sign. Okay, I'll talk more about in the future about dealing with these kinds of problems, because this isn't going to work out great, because as you can see, all these are basically floating pieces of metal. So in reality, what would happen is they would just disappear if we tried to cut that out and make a sign. But that's something for another video. All right, so that's basically how you find an object, save it, and import it in, and then you're ready for the next step. Let's add some text into the program here right now at the same time. So text is a little bit simpler because it's right in the program. Perhaps you wanted a very, very specific text. You could also go in into here. So here's a good example. So this Danger Cats has kind of a neat text to it. So if we go images, you look at something like that. That's pretty cool. You're not going to find a text like that in I'm just going to save this here. I'll show you this sample. You're not going to find a text like that in the program here. So what you can do is you can go ahead and just take the image, import it in. There it is. We're going to vectorize that. So I'll scan it. I'll remove that. Delete it. And now we have this Danger Cats lettering, and we could actually turn that into lettering we wanted. So essentially, you won't be able to write Danger Cats to look like that using our text that you find in the program. So if it's a very specific text, just find a Google image of it, vectorize it, and just use it like this. I know even with this one, for example, I had a student who needed a sign made and they wanted to say Danger Ranger on it, and they wanted this specific text. So what I did is I took the text and I broke it up so that I had separate R's and stuff like that. Here, I'll just show an example. So for example, Ranger I don't have, but I do have an R here, so I could take that R. I have an A right here. I could take that A, and I have the N, and I could just put the N. There's a G, E, R. So I was able to spell Ranger just using the letters that are found in there. So you can mess around with it in that way as well. That's getting a little bit more advanced, but that's still a pretty cool thing that you can do. And yeah, it takes some messing around with. Okay, so back to what we were looking at. Let's just do regular text. So if we want to insert regular text, I just go to Text Tools, and I've got a few things going here. There's a spell check. There's the kerning, which is basically how close the letters are together. Essentially, choose one of these. I always just work with the very first one. I usually just go right there, click anywhere on my screen, and then do my text, and I'll modify it afterwards. But basically all these things do is just different modifications to the text. This is my preference, is working on just go like that and start typing. Alright, so we're going to go up to the information about what we're working with. So here's the size of the letters we're going to be making. Maybe we want it 3 3/4. You could type it in. There's 4 inches. Spacing. Most of this other stuff we don't really need to worry about. Okay, for a basic work, just go ahead and type it in, get your size, and again, your size doesn't even matter. We change that later on too. And type in what you want. So let's go with my project. Okay, so I'm going to highlight, I'm going to highlight my project, and I don't really like that font. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at different fonts. So you saw how I use that drop down menu, and then we get all of our fonts here. And so what I did earlier is you saw me highlight the letters. I like to do that because then what it does is it shows me the exact words I'm looking at, what they'll look like. You can see the sample up here. There, so you just flip through these until you find the one that you're happy with. And a lot of people want fancy stuff. You might want some script writing, whatever the case is. Anyway, so you just find the one you like the best. There, I want something just simple. All right. And unfortunately, I was messing around with my program earlier. So what I went and did is I was messing with the kerfing on it. So I'm just going to change that back. Yours will be defaulted to 100. So let me just type something in again here. You'll see how much different this looks. There, you see how it didn't squeeze all my letters together like it did before that? Alright. So when it's set at 100, you're going to have regular spacing. What I had done earlier is I was messing with my kerfing because I was doing something else. I changed it way down to like 70 something. You see what it does? It squeezes the overlap of your letters. There's times you'll want to do that. And the most common time is when you're working on an arch. Okay, but normally you don't need to change that anyways. The kerfing I like to do manually myself in another way, which I'm going to show you now. Okay, so what we've done is we've put some text down. We chose a size, we chose a font, and again, we can modify that all we want down the road here. I'm going to highlight my text, and I need to go up to a range. Go up to a range, and I need to convert my text to graphics. To use this in a project, it's always really good to change from text to graphics. So basically, the computer is understanding that this is no longer writing, this is going into a project. All right, it's going to kind of look the same, but it'll act a lot different for you. What happens though, the moment that you turn turn text into graphics, is everything becomes individualized, which might be good. This is what I mean by, this is where I would mess with my kerning. Instead of actually doing the kerning using the feature, I would just select individual letters and I would move them closer if I wanted to. Most of the time it's not something you do, but there might be an occasion when you do that. This would be a really good time to do that. I'll just turn everything back. So what I want to do is make sure that those stay together, okay, because if I want to move them around or I want to change the size of them, I will want to keep them together. You could highlight them all and work with them like that. That gets to be a bit tedious down the road. So my suggestion, especially when you go to align something, if you want to go and align something and you go to center it, so I just hit Control K to center it. Well, guess what it did? It went and centered every letter individually, which is kind of useless to me. So I want to group those together to make one. The shortcut for group is just Control G. So I just hit Control G. Now what happens when I select it? It selects the entire thing instead of just individual letters. I'm going to go Alt G to undo that, or to just degroup. There. So now I'm back to just individual letters if I want to mess with them individually, but I don't. And you can do this grouping not just with your text, but you can also do this with objects in your project. So I've hit Control G again and I've grouped them together, and I think it's somewhere up here. Yeah. So under layout is where you'll find group and ungroup. So just Control G, Alt G to do and to group and ungroup. Alright, so I have them grouped together. Now I can move them around. Now I can modify the size. Now I can shrink them if I need. I can do whatever I need to do with them to make them fit in my project exactly how I want it to fit. One thing to be aware of, it is good again to keep the proportional lock on. When you unlock your lock, we talked about this in the other one, and I want this specifically to be 24 inches, it starts to kind of look goofy. This one doesn't look too bad, but there's times where you're not going to want it to look that way. So just keep your lock on if you're concerned about keeping your aspect ratio proper. Alright, so that was adding your text, and you would just add that to, I'm just going to bring that back. So let's say we had a sign there. Oops. Get rid of that. And I'm going to go Control H to make a path for this thing. I'm going to take this and I want to put it on here. And let's just say I want it right there. Perfect. My project. I would highlight that, Control H it, and there. Now you can see what it'll look like with your text in there. Again, that's not something I'm teaching you right now. We'll get to all that stuff, but it's just to show you how that text is going to work with your project as a whole. One last thing I want to cover here in this video is if you want to do some texting on an arch. So I'm going to get a little circle made here, and we're going to text on that arch so that it curves. Kind of like if you look at this one here, see the welcome kind of arches with that arch. So this is how you would do that. Right now I've just selected my regular text tool. I'll select anywhere on the screen and I'll type in what I want to. And that looks huge. We're going to just make it smaller for this. Of course, I got to highlight it for that to take place to affect it. There we go. Let's go right to 2. Perfect. Okay. And that's what happens when I do it like that. Now watch. If I take that exact same tool and I get it close to a circle, see how that T becomes solid? Okay, when I'm up here, it's see-through, and that's what it gave me. When I'm down here, I see the solid T. All I did to start my text up here is I just clicked anywhere on the screen, and that started my text. I'm going to do the exact same thing here, except I'm going to do it when I see the solid T. And when I do that, now what's going to happen, you can see it is going to follow that circle. It's going to follow that arch of what the my arrow was on at the time. And now I have letters that are following an arch. And this is where I was messing around with my my kerning. So why I like to mess around with kerning during an arch is because it tends to spread them out so much. Yeah, let me get this. That was at 100, and we're just going to kern it down. You can see how it's really messing it up. You go too much, but what it does is it kind of pulls the letters in. If things aren't fitting together nice, or if you want to kind of adjust how it's going to wrap around something, again, everything's based on that arch that you've already set up. So lots of times I like to just decrease my kern a little bit just to squeeze some of those letters together. When they start going goofy, I don't want to do much more with it. But again, the purpose of doing that was just to show you how if you need an arch, you need to put your letters in an arch, you can go ahead and do that. Everything else will be the same. I'll just get rid of that. There's my words as an arch. I can go and put that on a square plate. So you have to have that circle in place before you can go and do that. You cannot just put the letters on an arch. You need to draw the circle for whatever radius you want the arch to be. Put the words on it after, and then you'll have it. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up finding an image, putting it into the program and vectorizing it, and adding text to our project. So now we should be able to have all the information that's going to be in our project. We should be able to put that into it at this point. And I hope that you can as well. All right, thanks very much everyone, and I'll see you in our next video.